From living in my car to owning my dream business in 2 years. I never thought I'd spend my 26th birthday sleeping in the backseat of my own car, staring at a cracked ceiling, wondering if I'd ever escape this life. The smell of stale fast food wrappers mixed with a hint of engine grease. My blanket was a thin, tattered thing I'd bought off Amazon months ago, and it did little to hide the fact that I was freezing. But this was my reality, my home on wheels, not by choice, mind you, by circumstance, mismanagement, and probably a bit of bad luck too. 2 weeks ago, I'd gotten my eviction notice. The landlord didn't even bother to sugarcoat it. Pay up or leave. I'd scoured my savings, but it barely covered the last month's rent, let alone what I owed. I had no family willing to help. My parents had written me off as the kid who could never get his life together. And my friends, well, most had their own struggles. Some offered pity, others just awkward silence. And honestly, I didn't want pity. I wanted a way out. So my car became my world. Every morning, I'd brush my teeth in the gas station restroom, and every night, I'd tuck myself into the back seat, praying the streetlights weren't too bright, hoping nobody would knock on the window and tell me to move along. I started to think I'd been living in my car longer than I'd been living anywhere else. I remember one night in particular, trying to sleep while a couple of guys loitered outside the parking lot, laughing too loudly and smoking who knows what. I gripped my thin blanket tighter, wishing I had a steel door to lock behind me instead of just flimsy car doors. But somewhere deep down, amidst all the fear and despair, I had this tiny spark. A whisper of thought that wouldn't let me give up entirely. There has to be more than this. During the day, I tried to keep my life normal. I had a low-wage gig at a coffee shop near downtown LA, and it barely covered my gas and phone bill. The manager knew I was reliable, but reliable in this context just meant I showed up. He didn't care where I slept or if I had a shower that day, and honestly, I didn't care if he cared. I was too busy trying to survive. Survival was a full-time job. I showered at a 24-hour gym membership I could barely afford, bought cheap food that barely filled me, and spent hours on free Wi-Fi at cafes, pretending to be a normal 20-something, typing away on a laptop while secretly researching businesses and online marketing strategies. I wasn't just dreaming, I was planning. I had this ridiculous idea that if I could just figure out a way to start a small digital marketing business, I could escape. Escape the debt, escape the car, escape the constant feeling that the universe had forgotten me. I remember scrolling through Instagram one night, seeing stories of local businesses thriving, small entrepreneurs making their mark, people barely older than me, pulling in hundreds, even thousands of dollars a month. And I thought, why not me? Why can't I be the one to make it work? The logic was simple enough. I had a brain, I had determination, and sure, I had nothing else. But sometimes, nothing is enough if you're smart about it. Of course, ideas don't pay the bills. That's the part nobody tells you when they talk about starting a business from scratch. You have to eat while you're planning or you starve. So I tried every side hustle I could think of. I did freelance gigs on Fiverr, some design work, some social media management, even some terrible copywriting jobs that made me question my life choices. I delivered food for Uber Eats and DoorDash, sometimes pulling 12-hour shifts and making barely enough to cover gas. There were nights I cried in the car, exhausted and empty, wondering if I was doing the right thing. And yet, sometimes I found tiny wins. I remember the first time a client actually paid me for a small freelancing job. It wasn't much, maybe $75, but I felt like I'd won the lottery. I parked near a 24-hour diner that night, ate a real meal for once, and stared at the neon lights reflecting off the hood of my car. I remember thinking, this is the first step. I can do this. I spent the next few weeks juggling my coffee shop job, my freelancing gigs, and my side hustle research. My brain was a constant jumble of invoices, marketing tactics, Instagram algorithms, and pitch emails. I learned to draft proposals, design social media posts, and even optimize small websites. I watched countless YouTube tutorials while waiting for clients to reply, studied competitor pages, and experimented with different strategies. Everything was trial and error, but I was learning, and that mattered. Some nights, though, it felt impossible. I'd sit in the car, scrolling through success stories while gripping my phone so hard my knuckles turned white, thinking they all had help, they all had families, they all had a leg up, and here I am, nothing. But slowly I realized that was exactly why I had a chance. I didn't have anyone holding me back either. No one to question my decisions, no one to say I couldn't do it. My failures were mine alone, and so were my victories. Then one day it happened. A small business owner, someone I'd cold emailed about managing their social media, actually replied. And not just replied, but asked for a proposal. My hands shook when I opened the email. I'd never felt that mix of panic and exhilaration before. I stayed up all night crafting a pitch that I hoped sounded professional enough for someone with actual money. The next morning, I sent it off, heart hammering. I didn't expect a reply so quickly. Within an hour, I got a message. They wanted to hire me for a month-long social media campaign. They offered a small payment up front. My first legitimate client. My first real paycheck outside of survival jobs. I felt this wave of validation crash over me. For the first time in months, maybe even years, I felt like I had a future that didn't involve waking up in a parking lot, showering in a gym, and wondering where the next meal would come from. That night, I sat in my car and stared at the ceiling. The same cracked ceiling I cursed every night, but it looked different now. Hope felt heavy and tangible, not fragile or fleeting. I whispered to myself, "You got this, Alex. One client is just the beginning." I knew the road ahead would be brutal. I knew there would be failures, setbacks, and nights worse than this one. But I also knew that if I could land this client, I could land another, and another. Eventually, maybe I could escape. Maybe, just maybe, my car wouldn't be my home forever. And so, on that night, 26 years old, sleeping in the back of a Honda Civic, I allowed myself to dream a little bigger. Not wildly bigger, not crazy dreams that would surely break me, but bigger than yesterday. I had my first client, my first real victory, and maybe, just maybe, the spark I needed to turn this life around. The car would always be part of my story, a reminder of where I came from, but it wasn't going to define where I was going. And for the first time in a long time, I actually believed it. I realized dreams don't pay bills, but the grind can. And man, did I learn that the hard way. After landing my first client, I thought, okay, this is it. I've got a foot in the door. But reality slapped me in the face faster than a cold Los Angeles morning. Dreams are useless if you can't execute, and execution is brutal work. I wasn't just a freelancer with a client. I was suddenly a one-man marketing machine, learning the ropes as I went. I spent hours watching tutorials on YouTube, reading blogs, and taking free online courses about digital marketing, SEO, and social media strategy. My mornings started at the gym, not because I loved it, but because showering there was non-negotiable. And then I'd park near a cafe, sip a cheap coffee, and dive into campaigns for my client. My laptop became my lifeline. I learned how to craft posts that actually engage people, how to schedule them efficiently, and even how to track analytics so I could prove my value. I felt like a sponge soaking up every trick, shortcut, and strategy. But here's the thing. Nothing is easy when you're trying to start from zero. My client, while decent, didn't understand deadlines or urgency. I'd spend hours perfecting posts only to have them change directions last minute or complain that they didn't get enough likes. Sometimes they didn't even pay on time. Those were the worst nights. Sitting in the back of my car, my stomach growling, wondering if I'd be able to refill the gas tank. I'd stare at the ceiling and curse the universe. And the money, the money. Tools I needed to run campaigns cost more than I could spare. Photoshop subscriptions, analytics tools, even basic scheduling software. It added up quickly. I got scammed at least twice, paying for courses or tools that promised instant results and delivered nothing but frustration. There were nights when I considered giving up entirely. Just throwing in the towel, walking into a shelter, and letting someone else figure life out. But I didn't. Because amidst the exhaustion, the setbacks, and the loneliness, I found motivation. Every night in the car, I'd stare at the dashboard lights and plan. Not just random daydreams, but real plans. How could I pitch myself better? Where could I find clients who actually paid time? What could I learn today that would make tomorrow easier? I started networking like crazy, emailing small business owners, attending free local business meetups, and even awkwardly introducing myself to random cafe owners. At first, it was terrifying. I'm not naturally extroverted. I'm the guy who hides in the backseat of his car and hopes no one notices. But I pushed myself. I had to. I learned how to negotiate contracts, even if the first few attempts were disasters. I'd offer my services for free at first just to prove I could deliver results, then slowly build up my pricing. I discovered that people respected confidence more than perfection. And honestly, fake it till you make it worked wonders. There were nights I cried in that car, not just from exhaustion, but from frustration. I'd poured hours into a proposal, only to have a business ghost me. I'd work late into the night crafting posts and strategies, only to have a client send a one-line, not what I was expecting message. Those nights, I felt invisible. Los Angeles is a city full of dreamers, hustlers, and people climbing over each other just to exist. And there I was, 26, living in my car, doing everything right, and still feeling like I was failing. But then came the breakthrough. It started small. A local boutique owner I met at a networking event remembered me when I emailed them a month later. This time, I was smarter. I presented a full marketing strategy, showed examples of work that I'd done, and actually followed up like a professional. And it worked. They signed me on for a 3-month contract, double what I was making with my first client. I couldn't believe it. I parked in the same lot I'd cried in countless nights before, looked up at the stars, and whispered, This is what it feels like. Suddenly, I had momentum. My confidence started to grow alongside my bank account. I figured out scheduling, automated some processes, and learned to manage multiple clients without losing my mind. I still had late nights and early mornings, but those nights felt different. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was building. Slowly, methodically, and painfully, I was learning how to turn skills into income. Of course, nothing worth doing comes without chaos. My first big client came with problems. They had strict demands, constantly shifting priorities, and an endless stream of emails that kept me up at night. I learned to set boundaries, politely push back, and communicate effectively, skills I'd never had before. Each challenge was frustrating, yes, but also a lesson. I realized that hustle alone wasn't enough. Strategy mattered. Planning, negotiation, and communication were just as important as hard work. And the car became a symbol. Every night, crawling into the back seat, I reflected on how far I'd come. Just a few months ago, I couldn't even afford a single client. Now, I had a pipeline, a system, and proof that people were willing to pay for my skills. Yet, I still felt invisible at times. Walking past high-rise buildings and fancy apartments, I'd feel the sting of being on the outside looking in. But instead of despair, it fueled me. I didn't want to just be a part of the city. I wanted to leave a mark on it. I remember one night, after a long day of back-to-back meetings with clients, proposals, and revisions, I parked at my usual spot, leaned back in the seat, and let out a deep breath. My hands were sore from typing, my back ached from sleeping on the cramped seat, and my stomach was still rumbling because I'd skipped dinner again. But as I stared at the dashboard, I realized something important. I could do this. I really could. I grabbed my notebook. Yeah, the same one I'd scribbled random ideas in months ago and started writing. Not just tasks or client notes, but a real plan. Goals, timelines, strategies. Step 1, double my income. Step 2, secure 3 consistent clients. Step 3, save for office space. Step 4, own my dream business within 2 years. Writing it down made it feel real, tangible, not just a wish whispered into the darkness of my car. I smiled to myself for the first time in weeks. Not the kind of smile you plaster on for social media or a selfie, but the kind that comes from knowing you've clawed your way out of despair, one small victory at a time. That night, I didn't just sleep in my car. I rested, knowing that I had a plan, that I had momentum, and that I had proof that the grind could actually pay off. I realized something else too. Hustle isn't glamorous. It's exhausting, messy, and lonely. There are no awards for surviving nights in your car, no trophies for landing your first client after months of rejection. But the payoff, when it comes, is life-changing. And I was starting to taste it, just a tiny bit. Enough to know that I wasn't done yet. By the time the sun rose over LA, streaming through my cracked windshield, I felt different, determined, focused, ready to tackle another day of grind, strategy, and hustle. I didn't know how far this road would take me, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going back to being invisible. I wasn't going back to being broke. And I sure as hell wasn't going back to just dreaming. I had a client, a system, and a plan. And for the first time, I dared to imagine the future I'd always wanted. Not just surviving, but thriving. 2 years from now, I told myself, I'd be running my own business in my own space, not sleeping in a car, wondering if life would ever get better. 2 years. That was my goal, and nothing. No setback, no scamming client, no LA traffic, no fear was going to stop me. Because now I knew the truth. Dreams alone don't pay bills, but the grind can. And I was ready to grind harder than I ever had before. I almost quit. My car had been my home for months, and now I had nothing to show for my efforts. Or so I thought. It all started on a Tuesday. One of those days where nothing seems to go right, and the universe just wants to remind you how small you are. I woke up in my Honda Civic, neck stiff from sleeping in a twisted position, and went straight to my laptop to check client emails. I'd barely gotten my first 3 sips of coffee when the screen went black. Dead. Not a flicker, not a sound, just nothing. My heart sank faster than the LA traffic I was so used to hating. That laptop wasn't just a computer. It was my lifeline. Everything I'd built in the last 6 months, client proposals, content drafts, spreadsheets of leads, even invoicing, was on there. I'd been lazy with backups, assuming nothing catastrophic would happen. Stupid, dumb, rookie mistake. And now I was staring at a lifeless screen, realizing all my progress might have evaporated in an instant. Panic hit first, like a punch to the chest. Then came anger, followed quickly by despair. I tried to turn it on, press buttons, hold keys, anything. Nothing. The laptop was gone. And with it, a chunk of my fragile confidence. Then came the email from my client. Subject line: we've decided to go with another agency. Thanks for your time. I swear I sat in the car for a solid 5 minutes just staring at the ceiling. The same cracked ceiling I'd cursed countless times, feeling like my life had collapsed on top of me. No laptop, no client, no income, nothing. I didn't cry at first. I was too numb. But later, curled up in the back seat with my blanket over my head, silent tears slipped down my face. For the first time in months, I felt utterly alone. The tiny spark of hope I'd nurtured after landing my first client felt like it had been snuffed out. I questioned everything. Was I even cut out for this? Was I fooling myself? Should I just get a real job and stop chasing this stupid dream? I didn't move for hours. I scrolled through my phone mindlessly until the sunlight started streaming through the windshield. Then I saw it. A notification from a local business forum. A post from someone named Marcus. Former entrepreneur, mentoring small business owners and freelancers. Limited spots, DM me. I hesitated. I'm not proud of it, but I almost scrolled past. I didn't feel like I deserved help. I didn't feel like anyone could save me. But something in me whispered, what do you have to lose? I sent a message. Hi, my name's Alex. I'm a freelancer trying to start a digital marketing business. I'm struggling. Can we talk? 20 minutes later, Marcus replied, Let's meet. Coffee shop near downtown, 3 p.m. Bring all your questions and be honest. Honestly, I almost didn't go. I considered using my broken laptop as an excuse to cancel, telling myself I wasn't ready, but I didn't. At 3 p.m., I walked into the cafe and there he was. Mid 40s, suit jacket, a little wrinkled, a welcoming smile. He ordered a black coffee. I got my usual cheap drip and then we sat down. Marcus listened, really listened. I poured out my story. The car, the client, the laptop crash, the failures, the loneliness. I expected judgment, maybe a lecture, but instead he nodded, occasionally asking questions, sometimes chuckling at my self-deprecating humor. And then he said something I'll never forget. Alex, you've got talent. You've survived more than most people would ever tolerate. You're not failing, you're learning, but you need structure. You need to invest in yourself. And you need to trust that the work you do has value. It felt like someone had opened a window in the suffocating car of my life and let a breeze of possibility in. We spent hours talking strategy, how to brand myself, how to target clients who actually pay, how to prioritize projects, and yes, how to protect myself from tech disasters. He even suggested a backup system I could implement for under $100. After that meeting, something clicked. For the first time, I realized that investing in myself wasn't a luxury. It was a necessity. I bought a modest external hard drive, started organizing files, and dedicated an hour each night to learning advanced marketing techniques instead of just surviving. A week later, Marcus introduced me to one of his contacts, a small but fast-growing fitness brand that needed a full social media revamp. This was the kind of client I dreamed of, serious, budgeted, and willing to pay for results. I pitched confidently, laying out exactly how I'd manage their Instagram, TikTok, and email campaigns. I showed them examples of work I'd done. Even with my now broken laptop, they signed me on immediately. It was a landmark deal. 3 months of steady income, enough to finally breathe without feeling like my bank account was a ticking bomb. I remember sitting in my car after sending the signed contract, hands shaking, staring at the steering wheel. I laughed out loud, not out of joy, but disbelief. I was actually making it. I was actually starting to climb. With that first big client, I started saving every extra dollar. I signed up for a cheap co-working space for a day each week, just to feel like I had proper workspace. I registered a business name, designed a simple logo, and opened a business checking account. It felt small and humble, but it was mine. Real, tangible. Of course, life didn't stop testing me. There were late nights tweaking ad campaigns, clients sending panicked emails, and unexpected costs that ate into my savings. I stayed in the car because I hadn't yet fully left that part of my life behind. Some nights I'd wake up thinking, I'm still living here. I'm still sleeping on a back seat. What does this mean? But slowly, the wins started to pile up. Each successful campaign, each positive client review, each saved dollar built momentum. I realized that the car, the place that had once felt like a prison, was now a reminder of how far I'd come. It was a symbol, not a cage. Then came the night that solidified everything. I had just finished a week of back-to-back campaign launches, data reports, and client consultations. My body was aching, my eyes were dry from staring at spreadsheets, and I hadn't eaten a proper meal all day. But when I checked my email, I saw a deposit. The fitness brand had paid the full monthly fee. It wasn't just money, it was validation. Proof that people valued my work. Proof that I could make this business real. I leaned back in my car seat, letting out a deep breath. 2 years. That was my timeline in my head. 2 years from now, I would not just survive. I would thrive. I would have an office, employees, branding that made sense, contracts that actually mattered. I would prove, not just to the world, but to myself, that my grind wasn't wasted. And I realized something crucial that night. Breaking point isn't the end. Sometimes, hitting rock bottom is the only way to truly launch yourself upward. Despair had brought me to my knees, yes, but it also taught me resilience, focus, and the importance of strategic action. I had survived months in a car, months of client frustrations, months of isolation, and now I had a foundation I could build on. I finally allowed myself to dream bigger than before. Not a fantasy, not a wish, whispered into the night, but a real actionable plan. Step 1, maintain my landmark client. Step 2, attract 2 more clients of similar caliber. Step 3, move out of the car, even if it meant something modest at first. Step 4, save aggressively and register the business officially. Step 5, secure a small office space. Step 6, expand. Step 7, own the business I'd been dreaming of since I first sat in that car, staring at the cracked ceiling. I remember writing it all down in my notebook that night, hands trembling not from fear but from adrenaline. I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope, yes, but also control. For the first time, my life didn't feel like a series of random disasters. It felt intentional. By the next month, I had my first modest office, a tiny, sunlit space with a desk, a chair, and a whiteboard full of goals. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't fancy, but it was mine. I moved my laptop in, set up my account, and for the first time in over a year, I didn't sleep in the car. Not because I had money to spare, but because I had a reason to build, to grow, to thrive. I sat in that little office and looked around, not at the walls, not at the furniture, but at me. Alex Carter, 26, 2 years ago living in a backseat, now here. I'd almost quit. I'd almost given up everything. But instead, I'd learned, adapted, and created a breakthrough. The car was still part of my story, but it no longer defined me. I was ready. 2 years ago, I was living in my car. Today, I signed my first $100K contract, and I own the office I once slept in front of. Saying it out loud still feels surreal. Even now, as I sit at my desk in a bright, sunlit office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a busy part of Los Angeles, I can't quite believe this is my life. When I officially registered my company, I felt like I was taking the first real step into adulthood. Alex Carter Marketing Solutions. It read on the paperwork, plain and simple, but it meant everything. It wasn't just a name, it was my life's work, the culmination of months of hustling, failing, learning, and grinding from the backseat of a Honda Civic. I remember signing those papers in a tiny office, trembling, because even though I'd done all the work, I wasn't used to things going right. The first few months after registration were chaotic. I was still managing multiple clients, juggling campaigns, and experimenting with pricing structures. Every decision felt monumental. Do I hire someone? Do I invest in software? Do I try to expand services? It was terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. But I had momentum, and momentum is everything when you're clawing your way out of nothing. I started building a small team. Just one full-time employee at first, a bright young designer named Clara who had a knack for creating eye-catching social media graphics. I remember interviewing her in my tiny office, still marveling at the fact that I was conducting an interview in a place that, not long ago, I would have just walked past, staring at the glass doors of real businesses and thinking, I'll never belong here. Clara joined, and suddenly I wasn't alone in the grind. I had someone to bounce ideas off, someone who could handle the parts of the business that didn't require my constant attention. I quickly learned the challenges of managing a team. Schedules, expectations, conflicts, and the responsibility of someone else's livelihood resting in your hands. I made mistakes, too many at first, but each one was a lesson in leadership. Branding became my obsession. I poured over color schemes, logos, and messaging, trying to make the company look professional and trustworthy. I wanted clients to see not just a freelancer with ambition, but a business that could handle serious contracts, a company that deserved their trust. I revamped the website, streamlined our services, and even started blogging about digital marketing trends to establish authority. Every small action felt like laying bricks for a building I hoped would someday reach the sky. And then came the clients. Not just local businesses, not just boutique contracts. I was now pitching to mid-sized companies with budgets I'd only dreamed of. I had to learn negotiation quickly, to understand their pain points and to prove that my company could deliver results that justified every dollar. There were rejections, plenty of them, but there were also breakthroughs. Landing a $50K campaign was a huge milestone, but the moment I signed my first $100K contract, something in me shifted. I realized that I had gone from surviving to thriving. The business I'd once imagined while scraping by in my car was now tangible, profitable, and respected. Sometimes, I kept myself staring out the window, remembering the nights in that Honda Civic. I remember watching streetlights flicker past, wondering if I'd ever get out, trying to eat cheap takeout, and convince myself I was learning enough to survive. I remember the fear, the despair, and the sheer loneliness, and now the contrast couldn't be starker. I have a team, a brand, and an office I can call my own. The hustle is still there, yes, but now it's fueled by possibility, not desperation. Of course, challenges didn't disappear. I dealt with demanding clients who expected 24/7 availability, staff conflicts that needed delicate handling, and the occasional pang of imposter syndrome. Even after signing massive contracts, I'd sometimes sit at my desk and think, who am I to manage this? Who am I to be here? But each time, I reminded myself, I survived a car. I survived months of nothing. If I could do that, I could manage a growing business. One of the proudest moments was our first office celebration. I hired a few extra freelancers, ordered some catering, and we toasted to small victories. It wasn't extravagant by any means, but the laughter, the sense of community, and the feeling that I had created something that mattered, it was unforgettable. Clara raised her glass and said, "We made it, boss." And I smiled, because it was true. We had made it together. Profit came slowly at first, then in waves. The first 5-figure month felt like winning the lottery. I reinvested most of it back into the business. Better software, marketing, branding, but I also allowed myself a few luxuries. A decent mattress for my first real apartment, some new clothes, and the knowledge that I could pay bills without a second thought. I could see my life stabilizing in a way I'd only imagined during late nights in my car. But beyond the money, the contracts, and the office, the biggest achievement was internal. I transformed. I went from fearing the world to confronting it. I went from hiding in a car to standing in front of clients confidently. I went from surviving day to day to building a life I actually loved. And as I walked through my office now, I could see it. The whiteboard full of campaigns, the branded folders, the laptops humming quietly on desks, the faint smell of coffee that always lingered. I had made this. I often think about sharing this journey, about letting people know that success is possible even when it feels unreachable. I don't sugarcoat it. The nights in the car, the failures, the scams, the tears, they were all real, but they were necessary. They taught me resilience, patience, and the value of relentless effort. I want people to know that your beginnings do not define your endings. Your car, your debt, your fear, they are not permanent. What matters is your ability to learn, adapt, and keep moving forward. Even now, as I sit in my office reflecting, I feel a deep, almost overwhelming pride. Pride not in the money, not in the contracts, not even in the fancy office, but in the journey, in the transformation, in knowing that I could take the exact same skills, the exact same determination, and turn nothing into something extraordinary. Looking back, the lessons are clear. Invest in yourself, trust your skills, don't fear risk, and remember that small victories compound into life-changing results. The car was my classroom, failure was my teacher, and the grind, the endless hustle, learning, and pushing forward was my bridge to everything I had dreamed of. Today, my team is growing, our clients are thriving, and I'm signing contracts that would have seemed unimaginable 2 years ago. I still remember that first client, that first moment of hope in the backseat of a car. And now, as I glance out the window at the busy streets of LA, I see the city differently. I see opportunity, I see potential, I see the proof that even from the bottom you can rise if you're willing to put in the work. I'm Alex Carter. I lived in my car, surviving day to day, dreaming of more. And today I'm the CEO of a thriving digital marketing business. And if I can do it, anyone can. All right, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the story. We have so many more amazing stories coming your way. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. Our goal is to reach 100K subscribers by the end of this year, and we'd love for you to be part of this journey. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.